Has the attack of September 11th, 2001 changed us, or has it taught us more about ourselves? When you sacrifice individual freedom to obtain security, do you get the security for which you sacrificed? On September 13th, 2006, Freedom Party of Ontario founder Robert Metz addressed these questions.
Welcome to On the Line. I'm Christine Williams. Coming up on our Viewpoints panel, how has September 11th changed the world? Niels Chaitin is president of Motivate for Change International, and Robert Metz is the co-founder of the Freedom Party of Ontario. He's also president. Thank you both so much for joining me today.
Good to be here, Kristen.
Now, September 11th, a day nobody forgets, Monday, 5 years after the fact, and a huge article came out. In fact, this wasn't simply one page long, this was more than one page full. The day that changed the world, and it continues here inside. Now, on this picture, you can see a picture of President Bush here. He's actually in that picture being told at that moment what had happened when those towers went down, for the first time being told in this particular picture. Now, I don't think we could deny that it has, of course, changed the world. I'm going to actually start with you, Niels, and I'm going to ask you, first of all, what you thought of this article, and even what you think, perhaps, on how it changed the world.
Well, it was, by the way, it was quite a... The author of the article was very flowery in painting the picture. Did a very good job painting the picture the way he saw it. However, there is no doubt that 9/11 has changed the world. It has affected us at every level of society. Planes plunging into the financial empire of the American society, Twin Tower. People dying. We heard it was like 5,000-6,000, and then it came down to 2,000 people. That's a lot of lives to be lost.
And then it ended up just under 3,000.
Yes, a lot of lives, a lot of grief. We saw the pictures, the vivid pictures of firemen dying and everything. It has made quite a profound impression on the minds of those who saw it, and I have no doubt that it's going to be living on. The memories will be living on. People will be passing it on to their children. However, there are some things that have changed for good. The word zero tolerance has appeared in our vocabulary. People's level of toleration has dropped at every facet of societal life. We can't even mention the flying industry. And it's just compounded and compounded and compounded. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, you had the England situation with the so-called alleged 10, 12 planes to be taken down. So it has created quite a lot of trauma in the minds of people. Eyebrows are sticking up because they just don't know when. I mean, once they were terrorists, look at what happened in Toronto just a couple weeks ago with the so-called 20, I think it was 18, 20 young men.
17 altogether.
17 young men. I mean, just panic strikes us. So it has been it has changed our lives.
Hasn't been an easy walk, that's for sure. Robert, how has it changed in your opinion? If you want to comment first about the article, of course, do so.
No, I think I'll get right to the point. I don't know that it's changed us that much, then revealed things about us that we maybe did not know before. It's really interesting because on 9/10, the day before 9/11, I was actually researching and working on an article about how anti-American so many people have become just here in Canada and also abroad. And since then I've learned, boy, it's stronger than I thought. There's a greater degree of anti-Semitism. There's you know, a tremendous belief in a moral equivalence between rogue nations and terrorists and the democracies, and that I never knew existed among the people in my own society. I thought most people had a deeper understanding of right and wrong, and I think the other thing that really changed on 9/11 was the acknowledgement. I mean, it wasn't the first time that towers were attempted to be bombed. That could have happened in '93.
Exactly.
And had they come down then, would we have then changed since '93? I think it was the success of the act that made us wake up and realize that the threat is real, that there are people out there who feel such great hatred towards our society that they're willing to kill themselves.
I find it very interesting what you're saying, that this was an issue before, because on our last program, I actually read a quote that was by Bill Clinton, and it sounded exactly like George Bush talking, because he was referring to the threat of terrorism. Osama bin Laden was the name that got plummeted into the limelight when those towers went down. And as you said, though, that name was actually around in a very threatening way, and it was very known to the Clinton administration at the time. This battle with terror had actually started before September 11th, and people of that time were thinking, in government I'm saying here, it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And it happened in such a brutal way that it woke everybody up.
That's interesting you say that, because I was reading, on that day I was doing the research, I was reading the newsletter from the Mackenzie Institute. I don't know if you're aware of their work. And
John Thompson, we've had him many times.
I know John very well, and I know in that issue I was reading, he was saying it's a huge terrorist attack is going to happen imminently, right? It was right there. I'm reading it the day before, and the next day it happened. So for me, it affected me, you know, very personally, because I was already involved in the issue, and it certainly set off a lot of passions. And
one of the things I want to raise is that in the article, the economist was kind of alluding to the fact that it may have been kind of orchestrated. And when I read it, I didn't know how to react to that, because I didn't follow the political before that. But and they were even trying to tie the president of the United States to it in the article, of course.
Well, it was clearly orchestrated, but I don't think by the president.
That's for sure.
He knew about it, and of course, if you read the article with the AUMF thing, where he went to Congress to get kind of a unilateral presidential or White House consent. Basically because a war on terrorism was announced, and we are going to take care of that. Wherever we have to go, we're going to take care of that. And he went and he got this kind of unilateral White House okay to just declare war on terrorism wherever we got to go, right? So as I read the article, I said, wow, you know, I don't have an opinion on that really, because I don't know what the situation was. But the author did a pretty good job in trying to come up with a case of where the government seemed to have, it was a concussion kind of a thing of the whole event.
Now, it's very interesting that you would say so, because there are those conspiracy theories going on, but there's also division in those theories, because some would say it's America that began that or had to do with it, but they wouldn't say which president, because right now Bush is the one at the forefront of the battle against terror. But at the same time, I mean, if people were really following the news back then, they would be aware that at that time Osama bin Laden was a major issue, and they'd be aware that the Taliban government and the Northern Alliance were engaged in a horrible fight, and America was right onto that. And a lot had begun before September 11th, so you know, it just goes on and on.
I think a lot of the conspiracy theories come out of the false expectation that government can save you from anything, including terrorism, which is just not the case. We can be safer, we can, you know, have tighter security, more surveillance. None of those things will help against terrorists who are used to closed economies, who are used to going through border checks that we wouldn't even think of, you know. So for them, it's easy to get through. The person who suffers the most with the increased controls are the average citizen, you know. But it's a price that a lot of them say they're willing to pay for the extra security. Is that what they're actually getting? I don't think, I mean, it's great when we hear of a foiled attempt. You know, that's great. It sounds like some kind of progress made. Would we have heard of any of these things had there not been a 9/11?
Robert, I want to hear what you'll have to say about this particular question. Do you think it has heightened an awareness of North American culture? Because long before September 11th, the Middle East, for example, and what's going on in Afghanistan, wars are not, by no means, are wars strange to them. This is something they've lived and breathed for a very long time. But in our culture, we're used to just getting up every day, minding our own business, and our world is basically our own family and social networks. But now, we're faced with a whole new world where it goes beyond our very own existence, and we start to take on more of a global perspective. Do you see this?
Well, absolutely.
An awakening, if you will.
Absolutely. There's a certain, that's the great thing about it, is the increase in awareness. I think largely, though, again, most North Americans were not aware of the threat against them, or they didn't take it seriously because, oh, no, you guys can't possibly pull that off.
It wasn't primetime news, put it that way.
No. And terrorists by being terrorists, are actually acknowledging their weakness. They cannot beat a country that's as mighty as the U.S., so they have to use terrorist tactics, which means subterfuge. It means hiding among civilians. It means all sorts of things that would never be considered in any sort of war convention. I mean, we even play wars by rules, which is a little ridiculous when you think about it, but still, it still shows some level of civilization on each side of that debate, you know. And I think that's what we've seen stripped away from the way that this is being done, that any veneer of civilization just doesn't exist on the part of terrorists. They have no respect for life, not even their own. And that's hard to contend with.
But a lot of people in our culture don't understand or even identify with this. They're still, because Jack Layton recently said, go out and negotiate with the Taliban. I mean, how do you negotiate with the Taliban? It's...
Yeah, what do you negotiate? You know, there are no terms. There were no terms offered on 9/11. Hey, listen, if you do this or we won't do this. That wasn't the point. 9/11 was the objective. That was it.
That was it. No,
and so to negotiate is totally outrageous. It just it disturbs me to hear that it's so popular with so many people.